Picture this: a summer morning in Colorado, a crowded campsite, a trail wider than a sidewalk. One guy sets out for a run, not into the wilderness, not at night. 7:22 a.m. He's wearing sneakers, a t-shirt, a GPS tracker on his wrist. He leaves first, calm, steady, on a route he knows. 20 minutes later, others run the same trail. No one meets him, and yet the path is busy. Cyclists, hikers, friends from camp. Not a single one remembers seeing him at all. The dogs catch his scent and freeze. The radio picks up a voice. "Joe." Then silence. And the volunteers begin to argue, not about where he is, but how this could even happen. Now think about it. Why did no one among dozens of people notice the exact moment he vanished? Why did the tracker, recording every move, show nothing at all? Who was the first to say, "We already checked there"? And why did everyone believe them? The morning at Rainbow Trail Camp showed no hint of alarm. The dry tang of pine filled the air. Sunlight broke slowly through the crowns of tall trees. A group of teenagers stirred awake from their tents, slowly, without rush. Among them, 19-year-old Joseph Kelly, college freshman, runner, athlete, strong, steady, no bad habits, a disciplined routine. Friends remembered it was Joseph's idea. Let's wake early, let's run the trail. It was his suggestion, his ritual, not a risk, not a dare, just a warm-up before a long day ahead. He left wearing sneakers, a light shirt, the tracker on his wrist. His phone stayed in the tent. No map, no water bottle, no navigation, because no one planned to go far. Where he started, it wasn't wilderness. There were signs, worn paths. Families came here, locals ran here. The terrain, flat, open, long sight lines, no ravines, no cliffs. The camp itself stood by the roadside. If you shouted, someone would hear. And yet, within 30 minutes of leaving, Joseph Kelly simply ceased to exist in the usual world of coordinates and maps. No one noticed when. No one understood how. In broad daylight, within earshot, on a trail he knew by heart. The trail Joseph took was no maze. It was a simple arc, a slight climb, clear views in both directions. Runners used it, hikers too, hunters, cyclists, local families, 2 meters wide. To the left, a gentle slope, uphill. To the right, the drop to a creek where wild hogs or raccoons might wander. All he needed to do was run 5, maybe 10 minutes up and turn back the same way. Joseph knew the route. He had run it before. He had no reason to go deeper, no reason to turn off, and no one ever saw him do so. 20 minutes later, 2 boys from the same camp followed. Same trail, same route. They expected to pass him on his way back, or at the very least, see him somewhere along the path. But they didn't. When they returned, 40 minutes later, Joseph was gone. His things in the tent, untouched. His GPS tracker, silent. No connection, no recorded signal, and none of the other campers remembered him leaving the main trail. That morning, 5 other groups were on the path. Not one reported seeing him. This wasn't just a missed detail. It was physically impossible. He left first. To vanish without sound, without meeting a single person, is like disappearing from a treadmill in a crowded gym. It might have looked like he ran farther, got lost, slipped off course. But soon it became clear, within 1.5 kilometers of where he started, Joseph Kelly was nowhere. Not then, not ever again. The last person to truly see him alive was Andrew Morales, 18, a fellow athlete sharing the same tent. They woke together that morning, did warm-ups together. Andrew remembers, "Joe was in great spirits. He said he wanted to beat his pace today." Joseph left first, light, unburdened, sneakers, a t-shirt, the Garmin tracker on his wrist, running, as always, with GPS active. Andrew watched him head out on the trail. He saw him take the first bend by the tall pine, a landmark at the trailhead. 7:22 a.m. Joe wasn't sprinting. He wasn't looking back. He moved in rhythm, relaxed, as if settling into a long run. And that was the last time anyone ever saw him, anyone at all. The trail Joseph ran was not empty. Every 15 minutes, a group of cyclists passed through. They monitored everything, recording routes for safety and training. Yet not one of the 8 riders who traveled that stretch between 7:30 and 8:10 reported seeing him. Not the sneakers, not the blue shirt, not the tracker on his wrist. And here comes the first break in logic. A runner who started first, moving ahead on the route, had to have been noticed. He couldn't just step aside, couldn't melt away, couldn't disappear, if the morning unfolded normally. But by witness accounts, Joseph Kelly simply vanished from the visual layer of that day, as if he turned invisible, or as if he was never there at all. Half an hour after Joseph's start, one of the camp instructors, Mark Weller, walked to the trailhead. From a distance, he thought he saw someone. At the bend near the eastern slope, a figure, blue shirt, dark running shorts. By time and description, it could only have been Joseph. But Weller didn't call out. He assumed Joe was finishing his run, heading back. That sighting came around 8 o'clock. The eastern slope led to a lesser-used part of the trail. Overgrown brush, old creek beds, dry in summer, but no cliffs, no sudden drops, no traps. It was easy to walk there, easy to return. Not the kind of place someone could vanish without a trace. Still, that distant glimpse became the pivot of the entire search, because no one else ever saw Joseph again. Not a shout, not a footstep, not even the faint echo of a voice. Only that uncertain observation made from far away. And from that moment forward, silence, as if the trail behind him had closed. Or, as one search team later wrote in their notes, it was like he set out, but never actually arrived. By 9 a.m., the camp realized Joseph had not returned. No one from the group had met him on the trail. A first sweep began. Quick checks of the path, the bends, the brush. Nothing. By 10:30, volunteers joined in. Tourists, hikers. A few carried binoculars, scanning the upper path from higher ground. From that vantage point, nearly a kilometer of trail was visible. But there was nothing. No body, no runner, not even a flash of fabric. At 11, rescuers and rangers were called. Protocol treated it as low readiness. Young, strong, most likely ran farther than expected. But by noon, the search escalated. A helicopter was sent above the forest, and what it reported chilled the team. The pilots saw no one. The trail, empty. No runners, no tourists, no cyclists. A stretch usually buzzing with life was deserted. It didn't mean others had vanished with Joseph, but it felt as though the forest itself had stopped showing what was inside. The people had been there, and then, somehow, shifted away. Rescuers marked 3 possible exit points along the trail. They broke the search into sectors. Dozens of people swept the grass, the slopes, the creek beds. Everywhere a person could slip, hide, or fall. At 1500 hours, the call was made. Field 0. The official declaration of a full search, not a single clue, not a trace. As one senior ranger with 20 years' experience later put it, "This was the first operation where I didn't even know where to begin." By that evening, 6 p.m., almost 40 people were at work. Volunteers, rangers, family friends. They pushed through forest from the trail to the cliffs beyond. The sector was divided into 4 quadrants. 3 search dogs were brought forward, given Joseph's T-shirt for scent. All 3 pulled east toward the slope, but only for 40 meters. Then, they stopped. One turned back. Another sat down. The third just stared down toward the creek below, without signaling. Handlers noted the dogs hadn't lost the trail. They refused it. Such behavior happens under stress, or when the animal encounters something it perceives as alien. Formally, it isn't evidence, but the detail was entered in the log. 8 searchers moved in a line along the creek bed. Later, one of them, Joe Tenner, recalled, "I had the feeling he was near. I couldn't explain it, just intuition. I knew he was there. I just didn't know where." Feelings don't make it into reports, but they spread among the team. Friends and campmates repeated it too. He wouldn't just walk away. That's not him. He's here, just right past the edge of where we can perceive. That evening, tension began to grow. Volunteers insisted on widening the perimeter. Rescuers argued he had to be within 2 kilometers. It might have stayed as methodical disagreement, if not for what happened close to midnight. At 11:30, one rescuer alone in his sector heard a burst of static on the radio. Then, a single word. Joe. No distortion, no background noise, one word only. And by protocol, at that exact time, no one else was transmitting. In a field search, radio isn't just communication, it's timekeeping, coordination, confirmation of every step made in the grid. Channel 1, open for all groups. Channel 2, reserved, officers, coordinators. In those first hours, there is no room for mistakes, no jokes, no stray words, not on a search line. And yet, on the night of July 30th, something broke the pattern. At 11:40 p.m., in Sector 2, Ranger Larry Green reported, "I heard it, just once, in the earpiece. A short voice. Joe. Male. Quiet. Like it was next to me, but carried through the radio. That's all. Not static. Not an echo. A single word. I checked the channel. Nobody was transmitting." The comms log showed nothing. No entry on Channel 1. No entry on Channel 2. Technicians suggested the usual. Cross-signal, pulse reflection, residual echo, possible in theory, but not common, and never before in this area, not on a silent frequency, not during a blackout. The incident was never formally recorded, written off as misperception. It might have ended there until 2 days later. Another volunteer in another sector reported the same thing. Same channel, same sound, same word. Joe. He had not been told of the earlier case. His impression was simple. It was like someone was trying to reach through, but didn't know how. On the third day, the search expanded. County officers joined. Volunteers arrived from nearby towns. Locals swept in, people who knew the land by footstep, not map. More than 50 people in the grid, working from dawn until last light. The trail network was combed in lines, measured, logged, every sector by protocol. 2 K9 units were deployed. One dog took scent from Joseph's t-shirt in the tent. It led cleanly along the trail. Then stopped cold. The second followed down toward the creek. Then froze. Not lost, not confused, just refused to continue. Handlers admitted sometimes dogs stop when a scent ends, when a trail is overwhelmed by weather, or simply gone, but other times, they stop because they do not want to go where the trail leads. Formally, not evidence, but still entered in the record. Dogs could not define a clear route. One path moved inward, but ended, too abruptly. A local pilot offered help. Private chopper. Visual sweep. From above, the forest looked ordinary. The trails, the slopes, the watercourses, clear weather, dry ground, open visibility, nothing unusual, no bright fabric, no sign of motion, no trace of disruption in the brush, like no one had walked there at all. The search moved forward, but again and again, those in the woods said the same thing. It doesn't feel like he's here, not hidden, not fallen, not escaped, just absent, as if he was never there to begin with. Near the camp lies a plateau, wide, open, scattered with low pines. Hunters cross it. Local ranchers know it well. That was the direction Joseph was believed to have gone. That's where the volunteers searched on the very first day. That's where the dogs and the binocular teams had been. And yet, this is the most unsettling fact. Almost 2 years later, in August of 2017, Joseph's body was found on a slope within 1 kilometer of the camp, just minutes from the road, the exact area that had been searched over and over again. Searchers could not accept it. One later said, I stood right where they later found his shoe. I swear we looked there. If he had been there then, we would have found him. The site was not hidden, not a cave, not a crevice, just a modest hillside, a place where hikers often stopped to rest. Why wasn't he found earlier? Theories surfaced. He fell into a dip, hidden by branches. Animals carried him away, then returned him. Or simply human oversight. But the facts resisted each theory. No, not when the team had passed that spot 10 times, not when his belongings were intact, clothes undisturbed, backpack beside him, no scuff of dragged earth, no signs of animal predation. From that moment, the case was no longer just a disappearance. It became something deeper, a riddle no one could solve. Not the police, not the volunteers, not even the maps. When investigators retraced the geography, trying to chart how Joseph could have ended there, the map itself became a puzzle. From the trailhead to where his body lay, 900 meters in a straight line. But follow the marked paths, and it becomes a 2.5-kilometer loop with 2 sharp turns and 1 shallow ravine to cross. It was not a random drift off course. It was deliberate movement, something that required choice and navigation, as if he had been led. By all logic, Joseph should have been seen, either returning the same way or crossing paths with someone. Volunteers, hikers, hunters, rangers, dozens of eyes on the area. But no one saw him go in, and no one saw him come out. Not a single person recorded his movement toward that slope. And the strangest part, there were no footprints, none in the area where his body was found. Even after the rain that fell on the second day of the search, no tracks, no impressions, as though no one had ever walked there. Specialists tried to reconstruct what might have happened. Scenario 1, he left the trail, wandered into the woods. Problem, there was no split, no visible turnoff. Scenario 2, he deliberately took the old hunter's track. Problem, the path was overgrown, invisible even from the air. Scenario 3, he became disoriented, circled back to camp from the opposite side. Problem, in that case, he would have been heard when they shouted his name. None of the scenarios explained how he appeared where he wasn't supposed to be. And strangest of all, when his body was found, Joseph lay on his back. No signs of a fall, no slide marks, no trauma from slipping down a slope, almost as if he had lain down there by choice, or as if someone had placed him. The logic clashes, but the facts stand. Physically, he could have reached that slope, yet by every observation, by every missing trail, he never did. Joseph always ran with his tracker, a Garmin Forerunner, standard for athletes, step counter, heart rate monitor, GPS log. Not a live transmitter, but a device that records and stores the route. Friends confirmed he always switched it on, not from paranoia, from habit. In his tent, they found his phone, charged, clean screen. Last opened the night before the run, but no data sync, no record, which meant 2 possibilities. Either he never connected the run, or the watch never came back. Because the tracker itself was missing. Not on his body, not near the bag, not in the brush, not in the soil, nowhere. That left 2 haunting questions. If he was wearing it, where did it go? And if it stayed with him, why was not even 1 coordinate recorded? By design, the device stores data locally. Even with a dead battery, the logs remain. Maybe it was removed, maybe it was broken, but on the body there was nothing. No fragments of plastic, no strap, not even a metal clasp. The tracker was gone, completely. In quiet conversation afterward, a volunteer with experience in such gadgets put it bluntly. If that Garmin had lain in the grass for 2 years, something would have remained. The case, the buckle, at least a trace of metal. Garmin isn't paper. And that fact struck hardest, because everything else was there. The backpack, the water bottle, even his cap. Everything remained, except the one object that could have told how he got there. The official conclusion, released 4 months after Joseph Kelly's remains were found, was restrained. Accidental death. Probable fall from height, incompatible with life. But the report named no exact cause. Soft tissue had partially decomposed. Bones were scattered over a small area. According to the pathologist, the injuries may be consistent with a fall or with decomposition. In other words, nothing certain. His clothing was intact, shoes still on, pockets empty, no valuables. The phone had been left in his tent. The GPS watch, missing. No signs of animals, no drag marks, no visible route explaining how he arrived. The conclusion could not say where he had gone or how he had come to rest in that spot. His parents were told, most likely, he left the trail, fell, was injured, and died within hours of disappearing. But off the record, volunteers and rangers said something else. What no one could understand was why he hadn't been found at once. Because the place where they discovered him was not hidden, not unusual, not difficult, just a short slope, easy to scan, even visible from the trail. 2 groups had passed it with binoculars. Search dogs had entered that area. Helicopter sweeps had covered it from the air. One volunteer, who had searched during those first hours, later said, "If the body had been there from day 1, we would have found it, which means it wasn't there." That statement was never confirmed, but it was never denied either. Because the investigation had no better explanation, only protocols, and the feeling left behind after reading them. If this was an accident, then it was an accident hidden far too perfectly from everything that should have found him. From the very beginning, Joseph's father, Rick Kelly, joined the search. He flew into Colorado within a day of the call from his son's friends. And the next morning, he was on the trail. No instructions, no maps. He walked the same slopes the rangers had searched. He spoke to volunteers, listened for every sound in the forest. Witnesses said he was calm, controlled, until someone suggested the theories. He ran away. He left on his own. He didn't want to come back. To those words, Rick always gave the same reply. No, that's not him. If he wanted to leave, he would have said so. I know my son. He didn't run away. I can feel it's not true. On the 7th day, Rick spent the evening sitting at the trailhead, silent, alone on a fallen log. Then he approached the coordinator, asked for permission to walk the old hunter's path, alone. The rescuers agreed. He walked 1.5 miles, then returned without a word. The next day, he did it again. The day after, again. A ranger who worked the base camp remembers. He never argued, never got in the way. But when he looked at the map, it was like he was searching for something that wasn't drawn there, as if he knew what he was supposed to see, but couldn't find it. When the official search was shut down, Rick returned home to Tennessee. Half a year later, he came back, walked the same trail again, alone. The 3rd time, on the anniversary. The 4th, a month after his son's body was found. He spoke little, only one phrase he repeated. I don't know how, but he didn't leave. He didn't fall. He was here, the entire time. Some areas along the Rainbow Trail were combed a dozen times, viewed from the air, walked by dogs, checked, step by step, by human lines. And yet several searchers admitted the same uncanny impression, that certain places felt untouched, as if they had never truly gone in, as if the terrain itself refused entry. One ranger put it simply, you walk forward, and suddenly you want to turn back. No reason, your legs just won't go. Such things don't make it into reports, but the memory of them lingered, especially around the slope where Joseph's body was eventually found. An ordinary rise with sparse brush, nothing special, nothing hidden, and yet, somehow, it was passed by, repeatedly. No one noticed at first. Only later, when the body was finally discovered, did those small recollections return. I thought they'd already searched that area, so I didn't go. Looked cleared enough, I figured someone had been through. I started toward it and turned back, can't explain why. One retired ranger who volunteered put it this way: there are zones that look covered on paper, but in your gut, they're not. It feels like you never actually went in, even when you swear you did. Psychologists commenting on such cases describe it as a cognitive effect, the mind under monotony, when landscape is too flat, when sound drops to nothing. The brain stops registering movement, stops marking memory. It creates the illusion that a place does not let itself be remembered. In ordinary life, harmless. But during a search, it's deadly. We thought we had been there, but it felt like we hadn't. And when Joseph's body was finally found exactly inside one of those blank zones, one question remained. What had more power that week? A lack of equipment, or something that no instrument could ever register? In the 4th week after Joseph disappeared, a man walked into the command post. About 50 years old, his name was Walter Jennings, local, hunter. He lived about an hour's drive from Rainbow Trail. He wasn't part of the search, didn't know the family, didn't know the volunteers. He came on his own, with one story. On the morning of July 24th, the day after Joseph vanished, Walter had been hunting 2 kilometers from camp. That time of year, he usually took a lookout spot on a ridge above a dry creek. Around 7 a.m., he heard a voice, a man's voice, not a cry, not a call for help, just a short phrase, spoken calmly, clearly. "I'm here. Everything's fine." Walter assumed it was hikers, thought nothing of it. But the next day, when he heard the news on the radio about the missing runner, he remembered. At first he brushed it aside. Then it unsettled him. Because in that direction, from where the voice had come, there was no trail. Nobody else was there. Walter didn't come in for reward. He said he only wanted to report it. In his words, it wasn't a cry for help. It felt like a status report, like someone confirming that he existed. The note was written down, but never added to the official file. Too many variables, too late, too subjective. 31 days after Joseph disappeared, the active search was officially ended. Only scattered private efforts remained, locals, family, volunteers who couldn't quite let go. Hope was thin, but still alive. Inside the command post, something else began. What many later described with a single word: fatigue. Volunteers dropped away first. Those who had searched daily now spoke softer, argued less. One coordinator admitted, "We talked more about who made mistakes than about what else we could do." Divisions grew. Some insisted animals had carried him off. Others said no, he left by choice. Another group, that maps couldn't be trusted in these woods. One veteran of searches in Wyoming put it simply, "This terrain works against people, not in a mystical sense. Just, it erases your route, it hides the trail, it doesn't give back to effort." Arguments spread. Coordinators were blamed for shutting down one line too soon. Maps redrawn 3 times, and notations lost in the process. A former soldier concluded with bitter precision, "We have 20 theories. Everyone sounds plausible, and everyone cancels out the rest." By then, the investigation had shifted, no longer the search for a body, but the search for a theory someone, anyone, could believe. Because without that, all that remained was emptiness. And no one, not parents, not volunteers, not neighbors, wanted to face the thought, he vanished, and it just happened. August 28th, 2017. A local farmer walked to check forest pasture on the edge of his land. Summer was dry. Cattle had begun pushing closer to the creek. That morning, he noticed cloth caught in branches. At first, he thought it was trash, an old jacket. Then he saw the shoe, and he understood. Joseph Kelly's remains lay only 900 meters from camp. a straight line from his tent. The slope was not hidden, not remote, not difficult. It had been searched in the first week, twice, by dogs, by volunteers, even by air, which is why the news froze everyone. The remains were partial, a skull, part of the chest, one leg still in its shoe, all in relative order. No drag marks, no burrows, no scatter from animals. Next to him, a backpack, closed. Inside, a cap, a water bottle, still half full, a packet of energy bars, nothing extra, nothing foreign, and no clue how he had reached that spot. The area was nothing special. On maps, just another slope. In memories, checked, cleared. And yet, that is where he was found, not 5 kilometers away, not behind a cliff, not buried in a ravine, but right there, within sight, where they had searched, where they had not found, where, 2 years later, he appeared, as if he had never been there before. When that sank in, there was no sense of relief, only tired silence. After the body was found, a second wave of questions began. Not about the death, but about the search. Because the shock wasn't where he died. It was where he had been lying all that time. This was a zone searched at least 3 times. Dogs had passed through it. Volunteers had scanned it with binoculars. The trail itself overlooked it. First theory, human error. They missed it. Didn't look closely. Assumed the sector was cleared and moved on. That happens. But then comes the harder question, why was the body plainly visible 2 years later? The foliage hadn't thickened, the ground hadn't shifted, no rockfall, no landslide, no flood to cover the slope. Second theory, the body was moved, by animals perhaps, but the clothes were intact, the backpack still beside him, the scene too neat for remains, dragged through a forest. And why would predators bring him back to lie exposed in the open? Third theory, he had not been there. He vanished elsewhere, died later, and was brought there. But by whom? By what? And why? No camera-recorded movement, no witness reported it, no signal logged a presence in that area for 2 years. Fourth theory, the simplest, psychological. We need explanations. And when they don't exist, fear takes their place. So we invent the why when the truth may only be nothing. But that thought collapses when you realize the scale. Everything that happened unfolded within a 10-minute walk of camp. As one ranger said afterward, we weren't searching 100 kilometers away. We were searching the front porch, and we didn't find him. But all that time, it's as if he was waiting for someone to look. When rescuers recovered Joseph's remains, his backpack lay 1.5 meters away. He had left for a short run, lightly dressed, minimal gear, which raises the question, why bring a backpack at all? Everything inside could have fit in his pockets. Even the water bottle was light, so why carry it? If he packed it deliberately, he planned for something more than a jog. If he took it automatically, a habit, a ritual, then why not leave it in the tent, like his phone? When the lab began cataloging Joseph Kelly's clothing, the report contained no words like anomaly or suspicion. Everything was formal, standard, neutral. But between the lines was what investigators would later discuss. Off the record, his running shirt, intact. The fabric faded, but untorn. The seams unbroken, no tooth marks, no claw rips. His shorts, still in place. The belt fastened. Shoes, both on his feet. One split at the front, but without signs of outside force. Socks, dry, unworn, undamaged. All of this, after lying nearly 2 years in open air. In country where animals roam freely, where snow falls each winter, where temperatures drop well below freezing. The farmer who found him reported only dry leaves and a thin scatter of grass at the site. No stench of decay, no signs of the body being shifted or dragged. Everything looked as if it had simply lain there, untouched, unchanged, almost waiting. Forensic teams found no blood, not on the fabric, not in the soil beneath. No stretching or warping in the cloth, the marks normally left when clothing is pulled, cut, or removed. Nothing suggested aggressive decomposition. Later, one forensic specialist admitted in private, "Usually, when someone dies in the woods, the clothing tells more than the body. Here, it said nothing. It remained silent." And that silence is the most unsettling part, because the forest can erase tracks. Water can wash away scent. But fabric left for 2 years in sun and wind, under snow and rain, should not be whole. It should be brittle, shredded, dissolved into fragments. The autopsy took place at the San Luis County Coroner's Office. The full examination accounted for the body having lain nearly 2 years outdoors. The report filled 15 pages, and in not one of them was there a listed cause of death. The skull, intact, no fractures, neck vertebrae, undamaged, ribs, uncrushed, no broken pelvis, no snapped limbs, no impacts typical of a fall from a slope or height. Soft tissue was mostly gone, but the bones bore no tooth marks. Scavengers normally leave their traces: rodents, coyotes, birds. Here there was nothing. Even the soil lacked the usual evidence. No significant fluids beneath the body. No clots. No stains pointing to internal bleeding. Even with decomposition, something should have remained. But here, the ground was dry, empty. The forensic examiner was cautious in his conclusion. He wrote, "Cause of death undetermined. No signs of violent trauma or accidental injury were found. The condition of the remains does not allow precise estimation of time of death." A dry sentence, but it destroyed every expectation. Because if there had been a fracture, it could be called a fall. If it had been drowning, there would be water in the lungs. If there had been an attack, there would be wounds, tearing, biological trace. If there had been anything, it could have been a death with an explanation. But here, it was death without an event, and that broke even the most skeptical. Those who didn't believe in mystery, who scoffed at coincidence, because everything the report could have said, it didn't. Not because anyone was hiding something, but because the body, like the backpack, like the trail, like the entire forest, remained silent. After the case was closed, the name Joseph Kelly vanished from official circles. In the files, investigation concluded. In the archives, case closed. But behind closed doors, experts circled back to the same question. Why can't we explain something that should be simple? Psychologists offered theories: collective disorientation, visual fatigue, repetition blindness, when a sector once logged as searched ceases to be recognized as immediate. It was rational, scientific, but even they admitted that can happen to one person, not to 20, and not 3 times in the same place. Rescuers spoke differently. "We accept that the forest is difficult, but not that it lies. Here, it felt like it deceived us, not by frightening, but by simply refusing to let us reach." Even the coroners, despite their neutral language, confessed behind closed doors. "We cannot determine if he died there or if he merely ended up there." And the rangers from the first days, they said outright they did not believe the body had been there all along. Not intuition, not a hunch, but the memory of their own steps, the memory of the routes they walked, the memory that they had been there and that there had been nothing. There is one version no one ever raised officially, not because it was impossible, but because if it's true, then everything we know about search, safety, and common sense becomes useless. It isn't spoken at briefings. It isn't written into reports. It isn't said to families. But it circulates quietly between veteran search and rescue teams, men and women who've found bodies countless times, always where they should be, but never like this. The version is simple. He wasn't there, not all that time. He appeared later, after the search was over. Not because someone carried him, not because he was hidden, but because he was not visible, not detectable, not perceivable, as if the forest itself withheld him, as if perception itself was denied. This is not mysticism. It is how others have tried to describe the same phenomenon. Trails that dozens of people walk, yet later seem unfamiliar. Sectors cleared, but a week later, belongings are found inside them. A person in plain sight, and then gone, as if erased. The reason no one speaks of this version is simple. It solves nothing. It finds no guilty party. It prevents no recurrence. It saves no one. It only says, sometimes what you seek does not want to be found, not yet. And that is not fear. It is the frustration of helplessness. Because if it can happen once, it means anyone can vanish. Anywhere, on level ground, and no skill, no device, no logic can stop it. Officially, Joseph Kelly died in an accident, unspecified, undetermined, but one detail refuses to let go. How many times must you cross the same slope before you believe he's not here? 3 times? 5? Because the searchers crossed it. The dogs pulled toward it. And then, suddenly, as if on a switch, the body appeared. Everything too precise. Clothing intact. Backpack neatly set. No struggle. No weight of passing years. Not like he had lain there for 2 winters, but as if he had simply arrived. So now the question is yours. Do you believe Joseph Kelly was there from the beginning? If not, where was he all that time? Does it ever happen that someone is right beside you, and yet you cannot perceive them at all? Can the mind simply refuse to see? Write your thoughts in the comments.